Welcome to the Real Review, where you get some of the latest happenings, real thoughts, and real perspectives in the world of film and television. Today, we're going to be talking about Godzilla Minus One. Did it blow me away with that killer atomic breath? Or was it a flop? That and more, so stay tuned. Post-war Japan is at its lowest point when a new crisis emerges in the form of a giant monster. You guessed it, Godzilla, baptized in the horrific power of the atomic bomb. The director for Godzilla Minus One is Takashi Yamazaki, and he is also the writer for Godzilla Minus One. Stars a number of people, and I apologize because I'm probably going to butcher these names, but I'm going to do my best here. Ryunosuke Kamiki, Minami Hamabe, Munetaka Aoki, Sakura Ando, and Koronosuke Sasaki. But primarily it stars Ryunosuke Kamaki and kind of follows his journey throughout the course of this film, which takes place over many years. He plays a character named Koichi. Overall, I came into this film very excited to check out Godzilla Minus One. I had heard a lot of positive buzz and a lot of people saying some really awesome things about the movie. Matt, in particular, who co-hosts this podcast at times, had a lot of wonderful things to say about the movie, and so I was very eager to check it out. I myself have seen a number of the different Godzilla films. Not so many, I would say, of the original kaiju ones from Japan, and all attacks are warranted in the sense that I'm judging this primarily based upon the American standard for Godzilla. But I did see the 2014 Godzilla, the 2019 Godzilla King of the Monsters, as well as the 2021 Godzilla vs. Kong. I actually enjoyed all three films. I think my favorite of the bunch was the 2014 Godzilla, and they kind of probably rank actually in that order. They probably get a little progressively worse. Godzilla vs. Kong was right at that line of being okay film, and there was definitely moments, and I completely understood why people did not like it, but there was definitely moments where it was too much, and it was just a little bit poorly structured and written for me. But I just, once I turned my brain off, I was able to kind of just have fun and enjoy it for what it was, which was just kind of a big monster kaiju event. Coming into this one, again, Godzilla Minus One, I knew that I was going to be engaging with the Godzilla variant of Japan, which comes with a lot of heritage, a lot of history, and a lot of historical context, if you will. And so for me, it was important to try to approach it with that lens in mind, not looking at it as the Americanized version, but the Japanese version. To start, I was very happy with the overall story. I felt like this kind of functioned, if I interpreted it in the way that it was presented, almost as a rebrand or a restart for Godzilla. I have seen clips and portions of the original Godzilla kaiju from Japan, and there are times in that original variant or version of Godzilla where he's almost a goofy, lovable type character. Obviously, he's a threat and he can destroy buildings and giant monsters and other kaiju, but he is also in those films sort of a savior. This film does away with that idea entirely. At times, it functions more as a horror film, a suspense film. So when I started watching the film, I was very surprised by that, and in a positive way. I thought it did some very remarkable things with connecting me to this world's Godzilla, and I was on the edge of my seat the entire time, wondering what was going to happen and just expecting to see where things were going to develop and go. That was a very big positive for me, and I would say that anybody that is really into these films about giant, angry monster from the deep coming out and rampaging, this was a very good modern take on that type of thing. There were times where I was watching the screen, I was watching this Godzilla, and I was actually kind of unnerved, and it gave me a sense of just kind of fear of this Godzilla. Obviously, I know I'm not in any real danger from Godzilla, but it still was able to make me feel this sense of almost horrific kind of grief and concern for the other characters that really were experiencing this type of situation in the film. And that's something that's pretty incredible. Whenever you can have a film that you watch and you feel like you're able to engage with the story enough to feel like you're in that world or you're connecting with that type of world. So that was a huge A for me. I thought the story just knocked it out of the park overall. I will say there were times where it felt a bit obvious what direction they were going to go in. I mean, we kind of know, hey, we're going to have this big climactic battle and showdown, but I think even in the midst of that, I was still excited to see how it unfolded and how it worked out. So next, I would talk about acting. I think for me, and I want to sort of talk about this in a way that I might not be fully aware of the acting style that's popular in Japan, but I do think that for me, there were times with the way that the actors were on screen where things almost felt a little too melodramatic. They would get so over the top and so big with trying to show an emotion and a feeling that they had that it started to feel unrelatable to me. And again, I'm saying that as somebody that is viewing it from America cinema perspective, from America culture perspective. In Japan, maybe that's their sort of style and way of doing it. I would say I've seen a fairly decent amount of Japanese cinema, and even from what I've seen, this kind of went beyond the realm of believability at times. I think not that they were bad actors. I always felt like I understood the emotion that they were trying to portray on screen. It just felt like they turned it up to like 11 instead of taking it to where it needed to be and adding some nuance and some subtlety. Everything was just extremely high emotion throughout all of it. And obviously, I get it. They're going through horrific stuff, and they would be at times probably breaking down and going through very intense emotional feelings. But even still, it just felt it was very hard to kind of get connected to the characters with some of their actions and emotions and responses to things. So that kind of ranked within sort of the C- realm for me. Next topic or category that I would like to cover would be within the editing and the visual effects. That would fall in somewhat positive, somewhat negative territory. The editing, for the most part, was very good. I think that whoever, I can look it up, but I think for the most part, whoever was able to structure the overall editing and the footage and the timing and the pacing of the film did a remarkably good job. I think, like I said, that the way that they chose their shots and the way that they did the timing of the cuts and the pacing of it, it just felt very intense, very well structured. It almost had the sensibility sometimes with the longness of a cut or the way that they would abruptly jump to different shots as like a horror film or suspense film. That partnered with the cinematography was just rock solid. They made some choices and they showed some ways of portraying different scenes composition-wise that felt very interactive and very interesting. It didn't feel like they were just trying to show, here's a monster rampaging. They would put different things in the foreground or the background and adjust the way that the camera moved in just such a way that you felt like you were really experiencing something, that you were there and that you were getting this sort of artistic impression of the experience as well, which is a very hard thing to accomplish. It was very apparent to me that whoever was doing the shots knew what they were trying to say with the types of shots that they're putting together. The negative side of that would fall into the visual effects. There were definitely times over the course of this film where the visual effects for me just did not stand up to par for what I would hope for and expect for a big budget major released film. Now, again, this is Japanese cinema. They have different standards for that. They might have been using a different technique for their visual effects. Maybe some of it was also stylized a certain way for a reason. But there were definitely moments where I would see Godzilla specifically, who they did, the lion's share of a lot of the visual effects on, and he would look, for lack of a better term, wonky. His body motion would seem to go outside the realm of normal gravitational pull. His body wouldn't move at a pace and a speed that I would think or see as feeling normal. There were times where some of the visual effects looked very uncrisp and kind of almost like in a draft form, like they needed to smoothen them out and polish them. Things would just be kind of clunky, I guess is the best way of putting it overall. Now, there were moments and times where it was amazing, and I would say gorgeous visual effects. But then again, there was other times where I would see something and it would just pull me out of the film. I would go, okay, that's very clearly not fully cleaned up, or, modeled to be realistic, to look realistic or to move realistically within an environment. And I'm trying really hard here not to spoil specific scenes and specific shots. This is a spoiler-free review. All I can say is that there were definitely moments throughout the course of this where it felt like it could have used a bit more polished for the visual effects side of things. And so the cinematography and editing, give those an A. The visual effects, unfortunately, I'd probably rank those around sort of the C plus level. Last but not least, there is the music. And I think the score for this film was beautifully well done. The one, very minor spoiler, I guess I will give, which might not even be a spoiler for most, but they were able to tie in the theme from the original Godzilla films into this one in a very interesting and kind of fun way. It felt like they were doing their version of a modern take while also giving room for the original to still be important, still play out. I'm talking about the original score, the famous burn, 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 burn. You could see how they wanted to continue on with that, but also change it and make it sort of a more modern version of it. So I loved that. I thought it was really cool. It's iconic in a sense. I think that sound, that Godzilla entrance sound, if you will, is in some ways as iconic as, the Jaws, doo-doo-doo-doo. It's iconic. I thought that was beautiful, and I felt like all the additional tracks and all the additional music that they put into this film, they all fit very nicely in with it. Everything that they did with the music brought me further into the film and added to that sense of suspense and dread and edge of the seat type of feeling. So I think overall they nailed it in that regard as well. And so I would give the music overall and the score an A. So that would give my overall ranking, if I put all of the different composited individual portions together, if I composite them all into one, that would give my overall ranking for Godzilla Minus One an A. It is a film that I would very highly recommend if you are into action, if you're in any sense of the fashion to these kind of epic, climactic, especially kaiju films. Obviously, it's a good one to watch. But if you're even into really good movies about survival, this film branched out beyond just being something that was just, hey, here's a giant creature from the deep coming to destroy, and it really took on this realm of people struggling to survive and what that means. And there was additionally some things that I didn't touch on because, again, I'm trying to keep this very spoiler-free, but it felt like there was some strong commentary about, I think, at least the way the director sees, the Japanese world, the government, and his perspectives on that. And I can't say whether or not that is realistic at all to, what the Japanese people are going through, but it felt fitting. My whole point in saying that is that I felt like everything that was in the film fit. It all tied together very nicely, with the exception of a few things, the acting and the visual effects that just didn't quite get up to snuff for me. It just kind of felt like it was a really enjoyable experience, and I would highly recommend that if you're into film, into cinema, then you check this one out if you get the opportunity. I've heard as well Takashi Yamazaki has already been in talks to start a second project doing a continuation of the story, and I would love to see where he wants to take that and how they want to move the story on into sort of the furtherance of these people's lives. Again, it primarily follows one character throughout, but there's numerous plot lines and different characters that are wrapped into this, and it leaves it in a way that I would very much be happy to see a continuation. It's also, I would say, ignited my interest to check out some of the other additional Godzilla content that's out there that I haven't had a chance to check out, which I've always wanted to do. I have a really cool Godzilla Kaiju Mondo poster that I picked up a few years back at a Comic-Con because I always planned to watch it and, actually check it out. And then hopefully this poster would be perfect and I could just be like, oh yes, I'm such a fan and I have this poster. And I think this film was the start of that for me. And so I'm very excited to kind of continue on and check things out. The next film that I'm going to check out in this whole giant, numerous, 20, 30, 40 films, however many are out there in the Godzilla franchise, is going to be potentially Shin Godzilla, which I hear is also a bit of a departure from the normal style of Godzilla films and is a little bit more of kind of like a horror, scary one. So that's all I have to say about Godzilla Minus One. I would love to hear your thoughts and your perspectives as well. If you have anything you would like to send me, any of your input, you can email at realreviewmedia@gmail.com. Again, it's realreviewmedia@gmail.com. You can also get connected to the podcast, get connected to me and our Facebook and all our socials. If you go to realreviewmedia.com, we'll have all our information there and past episodes, as well again as ways of getting connected to our our different social platforms that we're on. So I hope you get a chance to check out Godzilla Minus One, and it's been real.